Jeff is CEO and co-founder of Apptronik, and Apptronik has Apollo, right?
That's right.
The humanoid robot.
That's right.
Crazy stuff in the future. So why don't you tell us kind of just a little bit about Apptronik, maybe a little bit about your background, how you came to found this company and got interested in humanoids.
Yeah. So Apptronik is a robotics company. We're based in Austin, Texas.
Right.
We started in 2016. You can kind of think of Apptronik as largely coming out of something called the DARPA Robotics Challenge.
Oh, yeah.
So two of my founders were on the NASA Johnson Space Center team building a humanoid robot called Valkyrie.
Okay.
So we had this crazy idea coming out of school. I was finishing up my master's. One of our co-founders is Dr. Luis Sintis. He runs a robotics laboratory at the University of Texas.
Okay.
And then Dr. Nick Payne was finishing his PhD. Me and Nick are the same age.
Okay.
So I was finishing my master's. He was finishing his PhD. And initially it started with sort of seeing Valkyrie. And I thought, I'd always been entrepreneurial, started several companies before this. And my lens was, what's something that's going to be everywhere in 10 years that's nowhere today.
Interesting. Okay.
And I was sort of always enamored with personal computer industry and kind of thinking like, what is that moment? What is that moment in this generation where everything kind of changes? And seeing Valkyrie, I thought, wow, the same thing that happened in computing is about to happen in robotics.
Right.
Meaning the shift from special purpose computers to mainframes, and then mainframes to the personal computer, which was a general purpose platform. And I learned quite a bit about robotics. I worked in the Innovation Institute, I guess, at the University of Texas, and I worked in a group called the Global Commercialization Group. And I'd started to see some interesting things happening in robotics. And then when I saw Valkyrie, I thought, wow, this is it. This is the shift to general purpose robots. And so the idea was pretty simple, which is that, today in robotics, we've got thousands of robots.
Right.
They each do maybe one thing. And the future looks like one robot that can do thousands of different things. And if your aim is versatility in environments that are designed already around humans, then to me, it seemed obvious that humans would be kind of the predominant form factor. And I will say that was not a popular opinion when we got started. It's now catching, steam, and there's a lot of excitement around it, which is interesting. But
Yeah. I mean, you kind of answered my second question already. I was going to say, why the human form factor, right? I mean, like, why does it need to look like a human in a sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's three. Like I always say, 3 reasons.
Sure.
So the first one is retrofitability.
Okay.
So if you look at automation and you look at actually where the cost of automation is, what it's largely driven by, it's largely driven by integration. So it's very expensive to integrate robots into existing environments.
Right.
Sometimes it can be 6 times the cost of the robot just to integrate a robot. So if you want a robot that can seamlessly integrate into an environment that's designed for a human, then it makes a lot of sense to start with the human form. And really, a lot of this is about footprint, right? So humans take up a very small footprint. We can reach high, we have dexterity, we can handle all sorts of objects. And so retrofitability, I think, is very important. The second piece, which it doesn't have to be humanoid to do this, but I think in terms of this idea, humanoids will win the day, is about multi-purpose, multifunctionality. So if you look at like the ROI of automation today, if you're not running a task at least 2 shifts, then a lot of times the ROI doesn't work out.
Right.
And so it's really about like utilization rate over a 24-hour period. And so the exciting thing about humanoids is that, especially in logistics, you can do inbound in the morning, you can do outbound, by the evening. You can flow through the warehouse, which is what you see people do today.
Yeah,
right?
same thing, right?
A lot of times you have 4-hour shifts in some of these tasks, especially as you look at, at scale, and you're not talking about just the biggest players in the market. So number 1, retrofitability. Number 2, multi-purpose. And then number 3 is something that frankly I didn't see coming, but is really exciting, which is the ability to train these types of robots using new AI techniques
Really? Okay.
from human input. So if you think about it, like if learning from demonstration, whether that's via teleop or video, which is really where we want to go,
Yeah.
you can map directly from what a human is doing and how they're doing a task directly onto a humanoid robot.
Interesting.
And so as these new AI techniques basically take hold, that sort of becomes one of the really exciting things, where you offer now the potential to very easily train these robots to do a whole range of different tasks that you couldn't do before. And you can train them on a bunch of human input that already exists out in the world.
Yeah, I think that's really, really interesting, and I think it makes sense. Why you're saying like why the human factor, right? And it gives you that flexibility and the ability to, like you said, switch tasks and do things like that, just like we would do, right?
Yeah.
I think it makes a ton of sense, and really interesting on the training perspective there. I mean, so when you talk about getting to a point where that humanoid robot is able to take human inputs and be able to learn new tasks, and then you talk about video, right? I mean, in a sense, would the video be like plugged into the robot, or would the robot like watch the video and take it in? How would that kind of interface work?
So it's indifferent for what the input looks like. I mean, the idea could be like you have a robot on site and you show the robot what to do, and the robot's able to extrapolate and learn from that based on everything that's already ingested. You can also think about training on a bunch of different videos that it already has access to. A lot of these techniques are really being pioneered just in the last few years. So it's relatively early in the game, but it's very exciting and very promising. And so you'll see a very fast acceleration of, last year ChatGPT was all the rage, and generative AI.
Right. Yeah.
And you're going to see those same techniques with the combination of new research that's coming out start to converge, and really we'll be able to demonstrate really exciting things over the next few years for what these robots can do. One important point for all of the maybe traditional industrial automation folks that are out there that might be skeptical of these new AI. I always kind of hate the buzzword AI, because it means so many different things in robotics. But we don't rely on those new techniques for these robots to be useful. So if you look at the applications where we think they're going to be applied early on, we can use very traditional techniques that are already being used across a variety of other robots. And so think of this as much about the software as also the platform, where it's a software update away from doing anything.
Yeah.
And so we can use these classic techniques to do things like material handling, so handling boxes, handling totes. And then as we start to get into more dexterous tasks, that's where we need new techniques. As we start to get into more multi-step tasks that are more complex, we need new techniques to really drive and open that up. And to me, that's the promise of the humanoid. I think a lot of people in logistics are like, okay, well, you're moving boxes. A lot of robots can move boxes. I'm like, yeah, but we'll also be able to load the box. We'll also be able to do all sorts of things over time on the same form factor. And so I can get more into that, but
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's very interesting because you're able to leverage that, and like you said, the learning aspect of it. And I'm curious because I think too, you mentioned some of the skeptics out there, right? And obviously there's a lot of skepticism around AI in general, and then humanoid robots too. Like, will they learn too much and kind of sabotage us and take over or something like that? I mean, so when you look at kind of talking about the idea of them maybe being able to watch a video, right, and learn that task, I mean, how do you ensure, and I mean, how do we just maybe in general as a society ensure that we're staying safe in the fact that okay, they're not going to watch me do something that they shouldn't do necessarily, and learn how to do that?
Yeah, I mean, so today we tend to sort of extrapolate a lot onto humanoid robots because of the form factor and because of the movements.
Yeah.
But a lot of these things can apply across robotics as a whole.
That's true.
There's just certain things about the kinematics of a humanoid as you map these techniques from what humans do to a robot. So I think we're still a long way away from needing to worry about that. We need to be mindful about it, I think, today. But it's still relatively primitive in the way that it's learning. It's not the same AI that's accessible to us. It's accessible to all sorts of different robots. We just have kinematic advantages and versatility advantages in the form factor.
Right.
And so I think one important point for all of the skeptics is this holds a lot of promise, but this is the beginning of sort of, in my view, the next cycle for automation. So, and I think it's important to point out, like I sort of use the personal computer analogy quite a bit,
Right.
and think of this as the personal computer like in the early 80s.
Yeah.
So it's the very beginning, and I mentioned that, these sort of new AI approaches. A lot of this research has really just come out like in the last few years.
Yeah.
Like there was particular pieces of the puzzle that the latest research, the publications were hitting like summer of last year. So we're just now seeing how that makes its way into this space, and then how do you make its way from what's promising in research and then in demos?
Yeah.
And as everybody knows, like the jump from a demo to like production, working 24 hours a day, is a big jump, but they hold a lot of promise, and it's really exciting. So for Apptronik's standpoint, what we're initially starting with is what we call gross manipulation, material handling.
Okay.
So we're largely focused on case handling boxes, and we're also doing some tote movement as well, but largely focused on case handling initially.
Yeah.
And then working on this stuff sort of in parallel, both internally and then with partners. That's one of the unique things about Apptronik, I think, relative to some other players in the market, is that I use the PC analogy. I sometimes we'll use the iPhone analogy as well, which is we want to build this platform and make it accessible to others, and we'll work with others, and we can run a lot of different techniques in parallel, and we'll see what actually works as we sort of deploy these systems and get more out in the field.
Interesting stuff, and very exciting stuff too, as well, as we see kind of this huge advancement in technology, and it's very interesting to see. I mean, I'm curious, and we're seeing more humanoid kind of solutions come out and things like that. But from your perspective, from like Apptronik's perspective, I mean, what do you think the timeline looks like to us seeing like humanoid robots kind of more widespread, like actually being full on in warehouses and doing these types of material movements or whatever type of actions they're going to do?
So our plan is, so right now we're already underway with a variety of different pilots. We're going to be piloting through this year, and then our hope is to be in the first commercial deployments by next year in sort of limited use cases.
Yeah.
And so I think you're at this sort of like acceleration of the curve, which is happening right now.
Yeah.
And I think that, with the advancements that are happening in parallel on the AI front, I think you're going to see a rapid acceleration. And I think humanoids also have this ability to sort of capture the imagination of people. And so there's a lot of new entrants that are coming in. And, a lot of people that I think, they grew up sort of dreaming of this stuff that are really excited about jumping in. So you're just going to see more and more activity.
All right, very interesting stuff, and we'll definitely be looking out for more from Apptronik and seeing when is that humanoid robot going to be standing next to us, working alongside of us, or maybe just doing the work for us, right? While we're just chilling. So we'll see how that goes. But definitely very interested to see how this continues to progress and evolves, and looking to see additional iterations of Apollo and how you guys continue to evolve as well. So, Jeff, thank you so much for coming by the booth and talking to me. If people want to see maybe Apollo in action or learn more about Apptronik, what's the best way to do that?
You can check us out online. We're on all sort of social media, and then apptronik.com, apptronik.com.
All right, Jeff, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to meet you here and talk
Great
about
to
humanoid robots here as well. So have a good rest of the show, and we'll be looking forward to seeing how you guys continue to develop.
Sounds good.
All right,
Thanks for having me on.